Hello everyone, and welcome to a critical retrospective. My channel is mainly focused on Miraculous Ladybug because that's never happened before. Yes, I'm aware, I'm not exactly pioneering a new genre and stepping forward into a limelight nobody else has touched before, but I honestly think I can come at this from a different angle that nobody else has really experienced before. A seemingly very popular kind of video essay format is a ranking format, going through a bunch of episodes or movies in a particular category and going from worst to best or best to worst. I personally think it's really fun to see whether or not people like the same things you like or dislike them. I'm not exactly a person to get anal over a difference of opinions, so these kinds of videos are honestly very interesting to watch for me. While technically it would probably be the most logical to start with Season 1 episodes to rank, let's be perfectly honest, no one wants to talk about Season 1. After all, there are far more interesting episodes to sink our teeth into, and you know it. I don't think your mouth is watering right now waiting to hear what I say about Simon Says, or Pixelator. You want to hear me talk about the really juicy stuff, and where better to start than Season 4. In my opinion, Season 4 is a turning point for the show, when things started getting really good. The fact that it took this long for the show to actually get good is a discussion for another day. Now, I will entirely admit, this season has definitely been mixed in terms of quality. For every good episode we get, we're almost immediately slapped in the face by a really bad one. Now, I must pause and remind everyone that this is all just my opinion. Some of these episodes that are in the lower echelon of the ranking are probably going to be some of your favorites. These are just my opinions, okay? I really need to emphasize that, otherwise the comments, if there are any comments, are just going to be all about how I was so wrong about these episodes. So enough with all this fluff that loads of other YouTubers use to get that sweet watch time and ad revenue, because my channel isn't monetized, so I've got nothing left to lose. So let's get on with this. Starting with... Penalteam is an experience, to say the least. It fails on so many levels that it's honestly just quite entertaining to sit back and watch this roller coaster fall off the tracks and just be set on fire. First of all, this akumatized villain is about football, and yet it's Chloe for some reason. Honestly, it feels like post-Miracle Queen, the writers have absolutely no idea what they want to do with Chloe as a character. She's just there to throw in a snide comment here and there, and then gets akumatized into something that has absolutely nothing to do with her personality. At least in seasons 1 to 3, her akumatized villain forms were always somewhat consistent with what she wanted at the time. Chloe got akumatized in Antibug because she was upset with Ladybug for not taking her advice. She became Queen Wasp because she wanted to prove that she was worthy of using the Bee Miraculous. She got akumatized into Miracle Queen at the end of Season 3 because Hawkmoth was finally letting her be Queen Bee, which is something that Ladybug was not giving her at all. But then in Season 4, they start forcing Chloe to be into really strange things in order to justify the akumatized forms that they chose for her. Now in Season 4, she's obsessed with bananas for 20 minutes just so that she can become Queen Banana for no reason, really? And now they're trying to connect Chloe and football. I think one of the writers might have pulled a muscle from how big of a stretch that is. And why? Why have they massacred Chloe so much? It's because Thomas Astruc, the creator of the show, hates her. And now we're forced to watch Chloe do things that the Chloe from seasons 1 to 3 would never do, just so Thomas Astruc can feel good about himself. Surprisingly, that's not my biggest problem with this episode. Penalteam introduces 4 new heroes. This season had so many unnecessary episodes that could have been flavoured a little bit by adding these heroes in earlier. By holding off until now to give the rest of the Miraculouses away to people, it feels so crowded that I can barely breathe. And why does Ladybug choose Sabrina, Ivan, Mark and Nathaniel to be the next heroes? Because they're the only ones who haven't gotten Miraculouses yet in the class, that's why. They give us some token reasons for why they're becoming superheroes, but none of it means anything because none of it is earned. I don't want to hurt Chloe, don't make me be a superhero. You're not gonna hurt Chloe, you're gonna save Chloe. Oh, okay. I'm not good at football, I won't be any help. Yes, you will. Oh, okay. I don't like working with a team. Yes, you do. Oh, okay. I don't want to hurt anybody. You're not gonna hurt anybody, we're superheroes, which means no stakes, but whatever. Oh, okay. And we're still not done with picking apart this episode. Because the powers they thought of for the goat and rooster respectively are just really lazy and dumb. The Goat Miraculous can allow you to create any object you want, which is just the Ladybug Miraculous again. And the Rooster can allow you to...
My power is to choose a super ability, and I choose to score a ball anytime I shoot.
His power is to choose any power he wants, which is just really overpowered. Why doesn't Ladybug use it more often? Why is Shadowmoth going after Ladybug and Cat Noir's Miraculous? He should go after the Rooster Miraculous. It can allow him to do anything. Why are we still playing this stupid football game? Just use the Rooster Miraculous to give yourself the power to deakumatize anyone if you so much as look at them. Jeez, no wonder Chloe gets so angry at the end of this episode. This is so unfair. Now there's no conflict. Now there's no stakes because the Rooster could just neutralize any threat instantly with a snap of his fingers.
A little ridiculousness never hurt anyone.
Yeah, no. This is way too ridiculous, even for this show. I just want to forget this episode ever existed. Moving on.
Yeehaw!
Stop!
The way I feel about Psychomedian is not in the majority. That much is true. But I hope you hear me out as I explain why this episode didn't really do it for me. Honestly, it really just boils down to not really finding the humor very engaging until Angry Ladybug showed up. Harry Clown is a pretty annoying new character who keeps touching his nose and honking every 3 seconds, and it got old after the first time, honestly. Another thing about this episode is that it's just not really important in the grand scheme of things. It's sandwiched between 2 very important episodes, which is very strange. And the scene with Marinette trying to make Adrian laugh is just really hard to watch. And I get that's the point, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. However, as I said before, the fact that this is a filler episode kind of works in its favor because while this is a bad episode in my opinion, it's not important, so if I don't like it, I just don't have to watch it. I know I don't really have that many good points for why this episode is so far down, but it's my list and it's my opinion, so if you don't like it, I don't really know what else to tell you. If Psychomedian is your favourite episode, that's great, and I'm happy for you, but it's just my opinion, honestly. In my opinion, this episode wasn't funny, and it wasn't important, and the characters were kind of annoying, so moving on.
I meant to sing under the umbrellas of ice cream.
The best way that I can describe Simple Man is painfully underwhelming. Before season 4 aired, to hype everybody up, Thomas Astruc claimed that every episode would have a big bombshell revelation, equivalent to Cat Blanc. And, well...
You lied to me!
Like I've never done that before.
The plot is incredibly basic for how late in the show we are at this point. Marinette wants to go see Adrian at one of his photo shoots. However, the kids need to be babysat by someone, so in her divine wisdom she decides to take them to her grandfather. But the kids annoy him and so he gets akumatized. What an original plotline. Then Ladybug and Cat Noir get simplified by Simple Man's Simple Beam, and so they're really bad at fighting now. But Simple Man is equally incompetent in this fight, which balances things out, I guess. I put this episode above Psychomedian because, unlike Psychomedian, I actually kind of enjoyed the humor in this episode. Seeing Ladybug and Cat Noir struggle to do even the easiest things that they used to be able to do without any effort is funny, honestly. But the thing about this episode is that it's in Season 4. Season 4! Such a simple plot and premise belongs in Season 2, or even Season 3 in my opinion. This is the same issue that I had with Psychomedian, a very, very average filler episode sandwiched between 2 very important episodes. Thomas Astruc has tried to justify how underwhelming this was on Twitter, but I don't really understand his arguments. I'm pretty sure that he's claiming that this episode has lots of jokes about working in the animation industry, but why? I am 99.9% sure that the 9 to 10 year olds watching this episode haven't been working in the animation industry. I just have one question to ask. Astruc and co, who are you making this episode for? Is this some kind of hilarious inside joke that's only funny to you guys? Am I just supposed to deal with that and watch the episode and just keep in mind, oh, it's funny to some people out there in some universe? Forcing myself to find something funny just because some other people find it funny is just some other kind of peer pressure in my opinion. And once again, we have to have Marinette act like a complete creep around Adrian because I don't know. So this episode didn't progress the plot forward in any meaningful way and just ended up being a waste of time. And I find that very disappointing. Moving on. Lin was an episode that I really enjoyed when it first came out, but I feel like that was just recency bias. Now that I'm older and wiser, I think I can see this episode for what it really is. First of all, let's address the elephant in the room. The animation. The lighting, rendering, and motion feels very unfinished, and there are very blatant animation errors in some shots. Penalteam, Psychomedian, and Simple Man were hard for me to watch, but this is hard to watch in a very literal sense of the word. I feel like this episode was really rushed in terms of production, and so they didn't really have time to iron out the models and make them look aesthetically pleasing. But this episode wouldn't be this far down for a reason as superficial as that. It has story issues. Now, I apologize for the quality of the footage that I'm using, it's the only thing I could find, but if the animation team can be bothered to make this episode look good, why should I? My problems mainly boil down to this stupid ticket inspector. He constantly harasses Sabine and treats her like a criminal, refusing to hear anything she has to say and won't even let her defend herself. And he is just so smug about it too. He is enjoying every second of this torment. Now, I don't have a problem with characters acting like literal dirt wipes as long as they receive consequences for it, but guess what? This guy does not. The fine he goads Sabine into paying for no reason? Well, Marinette decides she's going to pay for it for some reason.
I was out of line too. I am so sorry, Mom. This is all my fault, which is why I'd like to pay the fine with my pocket money.
Quite a responsible act, young lady.
Okay, so he just kind of gets away with it and also gets money from the person who he was being really unfair to? Yeah, sure, okay, fine.
But, whoa, just for now, could you lend me the money? Please.
Oh wait, no, Sabine, the victim here is gonna pay the fine. Yeah, sure, okay. Poor Sabine didn't do anything wrong, and yet the ticket inspector gets one over on her. What a supremely botched message all around, jeez. Oh well, it can't get any worse than this, can it? Hang on a second. This episode was about racism? Oh... Kuroneko's main problem is the main characters, Ladybug and Cat Noir, or should I say Catwalker. Adrian gives up his Miraculous because he doesn't feel appreciated by Ladybug, and hasn't all season. While I kind of understand where he's coming from, I also think he's overreacting quite a lot. He's had more than enough opportunities to tell Ladybug that he doesn't feel valued, and he just didn't. Ladybug can't read his mind. The only way that things will get solved between them is if they talk it out. But that's not what happens. Instead, Cat Noir lounges around complaining about how Ladybug doesn't care about him and then just refuses to solve the situation so he can feel sorry for himself. And there's a really big tonal issue with this episode as well. I mean, Adrian's sadness is played completely straight, but then they play this very over-the-top violin in the background of him sulking and being very overdramatic, honestly. Like, watch the scene and tell me if you're honestly sad for Adrian.
Oh, boo-hoo! Let me play a sad song for you on the world's smallest violin.
So to try and get Ladybug's approval again, Adrian comes up with a different kind of cat persona that's more serious and more in line with what Ladybug wants. This scene and the fight with Kuroneko honestly saved the episode for me. But Ladybug is not free from my slander either. There are problems with her too. In the fight against Kuroneko, she's completely inept and unable to focus because Catwalker is there. Now, keep in mind, she doesn't know that's Adrian, so she just fell in love with this random stranger because he acts like Adrian. And Catwalker doesn't even act like the actual Adrian, it's more of a parody of him, honestly, so is this how superficial her crush on Adrian is? It makes me think that she only loves the idea of picture-perfect Adrian and not the actual him deep inside, and that makes it hard to root for her, honestly. So then she wants Cat Noir back because he's not perfect? I guess that's a nice message. You don't need to be perfect for the people around you to find you valuable, and that's actually quite a nice message. But Ladybug clearly prefers Catwalker over Cat Noir, which muddies the waters. This episode was a confusing mess of tones and messages, and for that it deserves this spot in my opinion. Moving on. Rocketeer feels very similar to Truth and Lies, in which the akumatization is triggered by someone not revealing secrets to somebody else. Ollie is not being completely honest with Lilo because she has to keep her identity as Rena Rouge a secret. It's honestly a fairly interesting premise, but this episode has a few issues, otherwise it wouldn't be this far down. My main problem with this episode is Lino. He thinks that Cat Noir and Rena Rouge are in love because they talk to each other, and Alia said some nice things about Cat Noir on the Lady blog. Lino's honestly grasping at straws here. And while, yes, from an outsider's perspective, their conversation is pretty incriminating, all it would have taken is to ask Alia, hey, what were you talking to Cat Noir about? And she would have just told him. Lilo's being a possessive, paranoid prosecutor and really should know better than this by now. He knows Alia better than anyone, and Alia knows him better than anyone. Surely by this point in their relationship, they should have enough trust between them to work out their issues. But instead, Lilo gets akumatized and just beats up Cat Noir really badly and doesn't seem too bothered about it. Wouldn't you have more faith in the superhero who saved your life countless times? I know I would. It's really uncomfortable to watch Lilo almost kill Cat Noir due to his misguided belief that he stole Alia away from him. Well, at least they make up at the end and Lilo realizes he was wrong. So that saves the episode, honestly. Another thing I like about this episode is how it really shows how Alia's life is changed by Marinette's confession that she's Ladybug. She has to keep more things to herself to protect her superhero identity, and that dwells on her conscience quite a lot. And while Alia really shined this episode, Lino's actions really rubbed me the wrong way, and so I think I'm just gonna leave it here. Just how obvious is it that I'm not really a Lilo fan? I cannot believe why Shadowmoth is still putting faith in Mr. Pigeon after the 71st time, but here we are. The episode mainly revolves around Marinette finding out about Adrien and Kagami's breakup at the end of Lies and tries to get them back together for some reason. Kagami clearly doesn't want to get back together with Adrien, but Marinette is being really pushy and refuses to take no for an answer. It gets really annoying to see Marinette completely step all over Kagami and her feelings and just do what she thinks that she wants. And Marinette doesn't really learn her lesson at the end. She just stops doing it because, I don't know, I guess she forgot about it after the Mr. Pigeon fight. And then Kagami gets mind controlled by the writers at the end of the episode to say that Marinette is perfect for Adrien.
You're the one blushing and stuttering and saying silly things every time that you see Adrien. You're the one who knows his schedule by heart for the next 3 years. You're right, Marinette. Adrien is perfect. He's perfect for you.
Marinette is a stalker, she just is. And hearing Kagami say that that's a good thing and that's why she belongs with Adrien is not right. And while all this was going on, Alia was at Marinette's house trying to figure out how Shadowmoth could stop reakumatizing people. And she finds out the secret to the Miraculouses that not even the Order of the Guardians could find out for thousands of years.
What if the rules in the spellbooks are not a finite set of existing rules, but only what the Guardians had learned about the Miraculous so far?
Which means, if my power is the power of creation...
Yes, create! Your only limits are the ones you put on yourself.
Hang on, what? Okay, so by stripping yourself of all limits, you can unlock the true power of the Miraculouses somehow. Now, out of thin air, Ladybug has a new suit and the ability to create magical charms, little talismans that allow you to be protected from akumatization. This honestly comes across as really forced, and I just can't take it seriously because it came out of the blue. If she can create anything, why can't she create a Shadowmoth tracker or something? If the only limits to a Miraculous holder's power are the limits they put on themselves, can't they just, I don't know, fly or turn invisible? Those are limits. This is the same problem I have with the Rooster Miraculous, in which it just grants the holder infinite possibilities. Storylines like this just leave me asking so many questions and it just hurts my head to think about. Oh well, I guess the writers will just do what they want. Have to come to peace with that eventually. What a shame. Glaciator 2 is slightly better than Mr. Pigeon 72 in my opinion, and I'll explain why. But first, the bad things, because this episode has a lot of bad things. First of all, Cat Noir is still making romantic advancements to Ladybug and making very flirtatious remarks, even though she keeps telling him to stop. She's made how she feels about this situation pretty apparent, and Cat Noir is simply unwilling or unable to accept this. He tries to justify this by saying there's so much love in his heart, and that he just can't keep it to himself, but I just don't think that's good enough. But as you probably guessed by now, I like to treat Ladybug and Cat Noir equally in my criticism, so let's get to Ladybug. While I agree that Cat Noir was being very abrasive, kicking him around in a garbage bin was very belittling and also very humiliating. Ladybug, as both a civilian and superhero, kind of goes off on Cat Noir this episode, and it's not very nice. Okay, now to the good things. I really enjoyed Marinette and Cat Noir's dynamic this episode. When Marinette wasn't getting frustrated with Cat Noir, there was some genuinely sincere heart-to-hearts between them, and I really enjoyed that. I sure hope some grown adults out there aren't bothered by this, so wait.
Ladybug and Cat Noir are supposed to be made for each other. I've lost my connection with my ice cream. I don't understand what it's trying to tell me anymore.
Oh, come on!
Yes, this is all it takes to get Andre the Ice Cream Man akumatized. He's upset because the wrong two teenagers are in love. Why is this grown man so invested in the love lives of children? Oh. And the fight against Glacier was really boring. All he did was just put some ice cream on the road and a few cars. He didn't really hurt anybody. And he doesn't even have a scent he wants to partner to make things marginally more interesting. Shadowmoth is wasting the Peacock Miraculous. And in the end, the status quo hasn't really shifted. Adrian still thinks that Ladybug will love him one day, which feels like holding on to false hope there, buddy. And the akumatized villain was very underwhelming, and so was the fight. So, yeah. Hopefully the next episode we talk about isn't as underwhelming. Right? Right? Was Dearest Family worth all the hype it got in the advertising? Yes and no. The start of the episode follows Shadowmoth as he finds a way to break the magical charms and succeeds. Almost as easily as Ladybug made the magical charms in the first place. They keep creating new rules for how the Miraculouses work out of the blue, and it comes across as really forced, like it did in Mr. Pigeon 72. But that's not what this episode is really about. It's more about Tiki's crazy sugar high, which came out of nowhere. Tiki's always been the wisest, most sensible Kwame giving sage advice to Marinette, and she's completely different this episode. We've seen her eat sweet things before, but for some reason the family's galettes are just too irresistible and make her go crazy. Finally, Tiki snaps and creates a giant galette in the sky, and this is really cool, honestly. This is what much of the advertising for this episode hinged upon. However, it lasts for such a short amount of time that it just doesn't feel very important. And all Cat Noir had to do was cataclysm it from space, and that was the end of that. The scene lasted for about 5 seconds, and then we had to go back to Dearest Family, a team of villains who honestly had much more compelling appearances in their debut episodes. Look, I know I talked a lot of trash about Qilin, but at least she's more interesting there than she is here. She barely does anything in this episode. This seems to be an issue with episodes where villains are recycled and put together as teams. Each villain in the team can only have so much screen time and focus, and so they all just kind of share minuscule amounts of screen time and just kind of act as a collective. Now, I'm not against old villains teaming up. It happened a few times this season and worked in those episodes. Dearest Family is the weakest link in my opinion. They're each fighting to see who will raise Marinette best, as if a supervillain would gain custody over a teenager, and these are the people who Shadowmoth tests his Mega Akuma on. Now keep in mind, only Sabine and Roland had magical charms that could break. Tom never got one, and neither did Gina, so it just feels like a waste. But for what it's worth, I did like Marinette talking down Tiki. After all the advice that Tiki has given to Marinette, it was nice to see Marinette do the same for Tiki. Their bond is really highlighted this episode, which I appreciate because it's not something that's really focused on. And wow, I spent a lot longer talking about this episode than I thought I would, so we should probably move on. Lies. A very fitting episode for Lila Rossi, if I do say so myself. Maybe we'll learn more about her and her backstory and why she lies. Nope. This episode is about Kagami. Lila hasn't done anything this season. Anyway, I will get to that in another video. This episode mainly focuses on the relationship between Kagami and Adrian, and it's basically just a carbon copy of Truth, but with Adrian. Adrian doesn't have any time to spend with Kagami because he keeps having to lie to her in order to justify transforming into Cat Noir. It's really sad to see Kagami keep getting neglected by Adrian, and she doesn't even know why. This episode follows a pretty unique format in that it takes place at the same time as Truth, and so we're able to see the things that happen in this episode from a new perspective. Adrian's perspective. Finally, Kagami confronts Adrian about why he's been lying to her. She sadly says that he lies because he doesn't want to be with her when it's the opposite case for her. While I do enjoy these parts of the episode, there are also issues with it. The fight against lies is really short and kind of underwhelming, and Cat Noir has to sacrifice himself again because that's never happened before. This episode is basically just truth, but less interesting because I've seen everything that happens before. One of our main heroes gets somebody akumatized by lying to them too frequently. This formula was interesting in truth, but it loses its luster the second time around. Luca and Kagami both got akumatized for the same reason, which makes lies less unique. And that's the issue with this episode. I just don't think it can stand on its own 2 feet. It's too similar to truth, and you need to watch truth to understand what happens in this episode. Part 1s and finales can get away with this kind of thing because it's telling a continuous story, but this episode is supposed to tell its own story and it just fails. If you think that my reasons for disliking this aspect of lies is flawed, I'm really sorry, and feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm always happy to receive constructive criticism and differing opinions. It just spices up life. But that's the thing, isn't it? This video by its very nature is going to be very contentious and controversial. Everyone is going to rank these episodes differently. So I'd love for you to engage with my video in the comment section. Feel free to let me know how you'd rank these episodes and if you think any of my rankings were unfair. Especially that Psychomedian one. Ugh. I don't like to go on angry tirades. I just want to discuss with you. I mean, unless angry rants are what the Miraculous Ladybug community loves. Cyrus the Great. So much happens this episode! Ephemeral is giving everything that fans wanted for years and then ripping it away from them. This is both a strength and a weakness. First, Suhan shows up and tells Ladybug that he wants to know who Cat Noir is, because he wasn't there to help Ladybug and the rest of the team fight Mulok. Mulok, are you kidding me? Anyway, and so Adrian reveals himself and Ladybug can't deal with that. Gabriel finds out that Adrian is Cat Noir and akumatizes him. Father of the Year, everybody. Marinette gets ambushed at the cinema by...
Hello, Ladybug.
Oh yeah, also, the world ends before Sass goes back in time. So much crazy stuff happened this episode, but then time is reversed, so it's all completely pointless. This episode bites off way more than it can chew, and it's way too much for just one person to talk about. Therefore, I've enlisted the help of my brother to help me with this bit. So, would you agree with me in saying that Ephemeral is pretty rushed?
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
Are you sure you can't
There
think of-
isn't very much to say because it was...
You're not good at this. Okay, what did you like about this episode?
I can't say the animation.
Okay, yes, but what do you like from this episode? That's what I'm asking you.
I like this scene that's playing over now.
The Mulog battle.
Yeah, that bit.
That is pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, finally we agree on something.
Yeah.
Okay, any closing thoughts before I send you away?
No.
Okay, so as you could probably tell from my brother's very good insight, there wasn't that much to talk about this episode because too much was going on. There was too much going on all at once and it just messes with your brain so you barely remember anything. Ephemeral really should have been a two-parter. That way everything could have been fleshed out a little bit more and given me time to breathe. I mean, sure, I enjoyed what was happening on the screen. A lot of cool things were happening, but ultimately none of it mattered. Everything I liked only lasted for about 1 or 2 minutes and I barely had any time to actually take any of it in. It carries way too many things at once and yet doesn't really do anything with its concepts. But I'm just repeating myself now, and when I start repeating myself, that's a sign that we should move on to the next one. I honestly really liked Mega Leech. In spite of the first half. Milan and Ivan are protesting against the mayor's oxygen project, which wants to breathe new air into Paris. This part goes on for quite a while and everyone gangs up on the mayor, which I can kind of get behind, but Milan and Ivan are just so chronically annoying. Now, maybe it's just me, but I just don't like episodes that try and tackle these kinds of things. Cartoons are an escape. I don't want to be reminded of real-world environmental issues when I'm having my breakfast in the morning. I get it, it's a a good lesson to teach, but I just don't like Milan or Ivan. I'm sorry. I get it, it's just a me problem, but look at how smug they are. In my opinion, the episode really gets going when Shadowmoth comes careering in to do his classic akumatization. Andre Bourgeois gets akumatized into Maledictator, and Mini Maledictator sprout out from Mega Leech, and they infect everybody, and so Paris is mind controlled, basically. The fight against the Maledictators is honestly really interesting, and Mulan comes into her own as Polymouse. I completely understand if you think that real world issues should be tackled in cartoons. I have nothing but respect for you if you believe that, honestly. I'm just saying that I'm a pretty busy guy, especially in school, and I don't want to be reminded of all the bad stuff going on in the world while I'm still stressed about work. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you think my opinions are wrong or controversial, but everything is subjective, and I'm gonna have to do a lot of legwork to defend my next pick. Okay, let me explain why I put Queen Banana above Mega Leech, okay? Alright, look, there's something you need to know about me, okay? This episode is actually my favorite episode this season. I know, just completely disregard me already. I am the worst. But just be grateful, okay? This could have been number 1. If I was ranking these episodes in order of preference, Queen Banana would be number 1, unfortunately. But I'm trying to look at this as objectively as I can. This episode is objectively trash, but it's just... Look, I have no excuses. It has absolutely no right to be up this high. Chloe is completely getting in the way of some kind of movie shoot that they want to do, and she's really throwing her weight around. She's been completely vilified by Thomas Hastruck ever since the end of Miracle Queen, and it's just so frustrating. Zoe is given the Be Miraculous instead of Chloe, and she is shown to be way better than Chloe ever was as Queen Bee, apparently. The characters talk about how crazy amazing Vesperia is, and it just comes across as the writers trying to gaslight us into thinking Queen Bee was the worst, when she was actually a really nuanced hero. Chloe and Bananas is such a stretch, honestly, it's just so stupid. And that's why I love it. It's just good, stupid fun, and sometimes that's what I want in an episode. This episode's downside is honestly just Zoe, because she's such a bland cardboard box of a character that I don't care about her at all. Queen Banana kind of comes paired with another episode this season. Queen Banana and this next episode are basically sisters, like Chloe and Zoe. And that episode is what we're going to talk about next. Welcome to the cast, Zoe. I bet you're a really interesting character with a lot of depth, right? Honestly, Soul Crusher is Zoe's first episode, and it's the only episode where she's at least a little bit interesting. This episode is way better than Queen Banana in the fact that Zoe is actually a bit of a character. She acts like an egotistical snob in front of her family because that's what they expect of her, and she just wants them to approve of her. She doesn't want to act like this, but she feels like she has to in order to be accepted. Chloe teaches her how to be an awful person to the rest of the world, and that's what Thomas Hastruck thinks Chloe is. But anyway, we're getting off topic. This is about Zoe, not Chloe. Unlike Chloe, Zoe has made new friends and doesn't want to burn those bridges. She's being forced to choose between the acceptance of her family and the love and trust of her friends, and she doesn't know which is better. And of course, Shadowmoth capitalizes on this because he does that every episode, and she gets akumatized into Soul Crusher, whose design is genius. She looks exactly like Chloe, which makes sense because that's what she was trying to be, like her family. Most people's problem with Zoe is that she's too perfect and doesn't have any flaws at all. And that's why I believe that if you introduce a new character, it's important for you to akumatize them. Show us their darker side, what they would do if they lost all of their inhibitions. And this is why Soul Crusher is Zoe's best episode in my opinion, because it makes her human. She can fall under the influence of evil people just like everybody else. So there is more to Zoe than just her sweet side. But we can't see these layers of her character without Soul Crusher, so she just becomes a complete blank slate in later episodes. And Chloe is at her absolute worst this episode.
Hey, that's our job!
Not anymore! You hate me! If you want to be my sister, if you really want to be like me, then I'm not the one you should crush. They are! Those losers! You're still just a ridiculous copy of me!
She's so abrasive and puts everybody else in harm's way just to save her own skin. The writing team tries its absolute hardest to make us hate Chloe, but all it makes me hate is the writing itself. While Queen Banana's primary casualty was Zoe, it's undoubtedly clear that the weakest link of Soul Crusher is Chloe. But I already went on and on about Chloe in the Penalteam section, so there's not really that much that needs to be said here anymore. Moving on. Crocodile is honestly pretty decent for what it is. We finally get an episode that really focuses on Juleka, just really hones in on her story. It's Luca and Juleka's birthday, and Marinette is too scared to talk to Luca after the events of Truth. And so Marinette asks Juleka if she can somehow keep Luca from showing up to his own birthday party. Yikes. Shenanigans ensue, eventually leading to the parents of Luca and Juleka getting akumatized. And all of this happened because nobody wanted to listen to Juleka. Not that she was able to say anything anyway. Juleka was too shy to say how she really felt, and who knows, if she did, maybe they wouldn't have gotten akumatized. Juleka gets to prove her worth as the Tiger Miraculous holder though, and I really love how being a superhero allows Juleka to shine in a way that she never really did before. Now she has the power to exact change and do something good for everybody. Her friends and family support and love her, and now she can finally pay it back. However, I think that the weak point of this episode is Marinette. Trying to keep Luca from going to his birthday party just because she doesn't want to talk to him because she's too scared is just so selfish. And yes, she does learn her lesson and apologizes to Juleka, but it's really strange why she'd even think of this plan in the first place. Marinette in this episode is facepalm worthy, but the rest of the episode is decent enough, and that's what matters in the end. Guilt Trip is a pretty unique episode. Rose has secretly had a debilitating illness that can come back at any time, and Juleka was told to keep this a secret because Rose didn't want her friends to see her differently. But eventually the secret comes out, and the class starts to treat Rose like she's a celebrity. Juleka keeps beating herself up about this because it was her responsibility to keep the secret. Eventually the guilt becomes too much, and she gets akumatized into Reflector for the 5 billionth time. Her Sentimonster traps everybody inside an endless abyss of guilt, and Ladybug and Cat Noir have to try and find the real Reflector while avoiding the purple balls that cause people to feel guilt. Reflector isn't actually hostile to the heroes, she's just really guilty and wants to be left alone. And so Rose is given the Pig Miraculous, which has the power of gift, which apparently shows its target the deepest wish of their heart. This goes hand in hand with Rose's positive attitude despite her illness, and she chooses to smile every day even in the face of adversity. This is what Penalteam missed with its heroes. Actual, honest-to-goodness, character growth. Miraculous is a show that's almost devoid of character development, so when it does happen, it is very special. When you become a superhero in the show, you really need more character than just, I want to help Ladybug, or I want to help someone I love. And that is something that Penalteam just completely fails at. But this isn't a Penalteam bashing segment, this is a Guilt Trip is Good segment. And I think I've said my piece. Moving on. We finally reached the top 10. These are the episodes that I think are the absolute best in Season 4. And we'll start with Haxon. Marinette entrusts Alia with the Ladybug Miraculous because she has to go away on a family trip. This kind of takes its toll on her because she has to keep the secret from everybody she knows. I guess holding the Ladybug Miraculous is a curse. Meanwhile, Gabriel created a Sentimonster called Haxon. It's a computer virus-like Sentimonster that allows it to connect to the network. It infects Max's robot Markov with negative emotions, allowing Shadowmoth to akumatize him back into Robustus. The highlight for this episode is Scarabella, Alia's Ladybug Miraculous persona. The novelty of seeing somebody else hold a Ladybug Miraculous is honestly just too strong to ignore. I really loved seeing Alia try to get to grips with her new powers and not mess anything up. She was a lot of fun this episode, and it was really a testament for Marinette's trust in her. Gabriel's gotten smarter, as his plan to re-akumatize Robustus was really intelligent. Cat Noir is very distrustful of her at first and tries to cataclysm her, but he does come around eventually, which saves this? Kind of. Not really. But in my opinion, that could be overlooked because the good stuff of this episode is really good. Alia episodes are really shining this season, and I love that. Ever since Gang of Secrets, she's just become a much more dynamic, interesting character. While you could argue that Chloe has gotten worse this season, I feel like that's made up for by the fact that Alia is better than she's ever been. Plus, the fight with Robustus was really interesting and had some pretty scary scenes now that I think about it. This episode was a perfect blend of comedy, drama, and scariness, and for that, it deserves this spot. I've been talking so positively about this episode, and yet there are 9 more episodes to go, so we should probably get to those. The very first episode of Season 4, Truth. This episode had a lot to live up to, especially after Miracle Queen, and I'd say it succeeded. First of all, Gabriel fixed the Peacock Miraculous, which introduces a pretty big dynamic shift, because we have a new villain. Gabriel becomes the permanent holder of the Peacock Miraculous and unifies it with the butterfly to become Shadow Moth.
Nuru, Tutu, unify!
Yes, I know the design is not the best, but it grows on you eventually, like exposure therapy. This episode follows the same formula as Lies, in that Luca is really upset because Marinette keeps lying to him to cover up her secret identity and her role as guardian. Luca was very understanding with her and would have understood if she said that she liked Adrian, but the fact that she won't tell him anything makes him really sad. And the best part about this is that I can completely get where both sides are coming from. Now that Marinette is the guardian of the Miraculouses, keeping her secret is more important than ever, and so she just can't open up to anybody. In order to protect those that she cares about, she has to keep all of this to herself. And Luca just wants an honest relationship with somebody because he's never had that ever since his father left. And he just cares about the truth for its own sake, which is very admirable of him. When Shadow Moth tries to akumatize him, he fights back for as long as he could, because he values Marinette's right to tell him the truth herself. But eventually the pressure of Shadow Moth's manipulations becomes too great and he turns into Truth. The fight against Truth is honestly very emotionally loaded because Ladybug and Truth both have valid reasons to be upset and also stressed. Luca then sees this new power as an opportunity to find out who his real father is, and he gets his answer. Jagged Stone, who he goes to confront. I mean, this is only episode 1 and yet so much is happening. This is a huge contrast with previous season openers because while they did have some big stuff going on, it wasn't nearly as much as this. And that's why Truth is such a good episode, for the sheer volume of stuff it has to offer. No meandering, no wasting time, you're jumped right into the thick of it. And Miraculous's pacing is so slow, so I appreciate episodes that just pick up the pace. But this is just episode 1, so there are definitely better episodes that we're going to touch on later. Moving on. Furious Fu is a very good episode in that it introduces a very important new character, Grandmaster Suhan, the celestial guardian of the Miracle Box. He's a very interesting, mysterious character in that we don't really know all that much about him, and yet he holds so much power over the Miraculouses. And he's actually got a point in that he doesn't want young teenagers to be holding Miraculouses, which could destroy the world as we know it. Yeah, I don't see what's unreasonable about trying to prevent the collapse of the universe, and yet the show tries to treat Suhan like he's an antagonistic force. But he's so clearly right about everything. But I can honestly overlook this kind of thing for the sake of the plot, because honestly Suhan is just such a cool character. Furthermore, the fight against Suhan between Ladybug and Cat Noir and him makes for a really compelling first act. This guy has decades of experience in Mirac Kung Fu, and so it should be pretty hard to take him down. But they use their wits to outsmart him. And then Master Fu gets akumatized into Furious Fu because Suhan threatens him. Honestly, it's about time Master Fu got akumatized. This fight is also pretty compelling because Ladybug is trying to keep the Miracle Box from Furious Fu and Suhan. Suhan wants to keep the Miracle Box to give it to worthy holders, and Furious Fu wants the Miracle Box to give to Shadow Moth, so their guard is even higher because there are more parties to keep away. I always love it when there's more to a fight than just avoiding leg kicks and punches. And it's also interesting whenever there's an antagonistic force our heroes have to overcome who isn't just a pawn for Shadow Moth. Suhan is working entirely of his own accord and wants Shadow Moth defeated as much as the next guy, but he doesn't see eye to eye with the heroes in how that should be accomplished, and so that causes them to clash. There's more moral nuance to Suhan's character than Miraculous would probably want you to believe, and that makes Furious Fu a very enjoyable watch that I come back to time and time again. This episode was very intriguing, and so is the next episode. Wait, Felix is back, and he's actually really enigmatic and kind of morally grey? Isn't this what I've wanted from the show all these years? Oh yes it is, and Felix has quite the bone to pick with our main villain, Gabriel Agreste. See, in Felix's first episode he steals Gabriel's ring, which has quite a bit of importance for some reason, and so he organises a get-together with his fellow upperclassmen in order to get the ring back from Felix. Felix has the upper hand however, and uses his wits to deduce that his uncle is Shadowmoth. This 4D chess game that these two are playing against each other is honestly so interesting to watch. Shadowmoth creates a sentient monster of himself in order to trick Felix that he's not Shadowmoth. However, Felix is not fooled, and then he rips a hole in Gabriel's trousers in order to prove that he's a fake when Gabriel shows himself again. Felix and Gabriel both think they have the other one fooled, and it's so funny. This kind of storyline really benefits from the dramatic irony of it all, and yet there's so much more to discuss with this episode. There's something else going on here. Something deep within the shadows. Something that's implied, but never stated. A threat that the sentient monster of Gabriel makes to Felix that has everyone's brains cooking.
And now you know that I only need to snap my fingers to make you disappear from here.
Why is Felix so scared when Gabriel says this? The only people who can be destroyed with just a snap of the fingers are... sentient monsters. Could that mean that Felix is one? Is that why he wants the ring back so badly? To take back the object that holds his amok and allows people to control him? This is what I mean. This episode introduces new mysteries that really rack your brain, and you really look forward to knowing where everything is going from here and having all your questions answered in one final episode. Oh yeah, and Marinette and her friends try and come up with a scheme to help Adrian know that Marinette loves him, but it's just so unimportant to this episode and it's really stupid. Chloe filmed their plan and plans to show it to Gabriel, and they're trying to stop him, so they infiltrate the party, but it's all just a bunch of nonsense, honestly. Don't even bother. This B-plot is only half important, and so it's easily ignored for all the good stuff. So, let's move on. If there's one thing I've noticed while making this video, it's that early Season 4 is, on average, leaps and bounds better than late Season 4, and Gang of Secrets is no exception. Marinette is starting to buckle under the pressure of being Ladybug and a Guardian and having to burn so many bridges in order to keep these secrets. It's so heartbreaking to see her break down mentally like this. Her friends come to see what's wrong to try and cheer her up, but Marinette's not going to tell them anything. But Marinette's too preoccupied trying to hide the miracle box from them, and so lashes out at them, telling them to leave. She's starting to spiral out of control emotionally, and it's causing her interpersonal relationships to break down. Shadowmoth decides to akumatize Marinette's friends because multiple broken hearts is better than one, I guess. They turn into the Gang of Secrets and plan on taking Marinette down. They're going to find Marinette and make sure that all of her secrets are revealed, or else. Ladybug corners Lady Wi-Fi, and I think that she sees this as an opportunity to make things right between them. From what I know, this is the first time one of the heroes has actually tried talking down an akumatized villain. Ladybug tells Lady Wi-Fi that she can reject the power that Shadowmoth gave her and fight for good. Shadowmoth tries to keep Lady Wi-Fi on his side, but his manipulations aren't enough and Lady Wi-Fi breaks free of the Akuma's influence. It really shows that even before Marinette's identity was revealed to Alia, there was so much trust between those two. And then we get the end, where Marinette finally spills all of her feelings out to Alia. She tells Alia that she has to keep secrets from everybody in order to protect them, but doesn't say why yet, because she's not completely comfortable explaining why yet. Marinette has to lie to everyone in her life and it's destroying her on the inside. She needs somebody to confide her secrets to. Two people can carry this burden better than one after all. So after 4 seasons, Marinette finally tells the truth.
Marinette, I'm your very best friend.
And I am Ladybug.
This scene, it really makes the episode. Now Marinette isn't alone. Alia can help her with her Ladybug responsibilities and help her discover the secrets of the Miraculouses if need be. At the time when this episode released, this was huge. This was the first identity reveal we got ever. And it really showcased to me that just because an episode contains akumatized villains that we've seen before, it doesn't mean that the episode is bad. And it just showcases just how painfully human this episode is. The episode's theme is stress and not letting it get to you, and that there will always be people who will pick you up even in your lowest moments. Episodes like these remind me why I love the show so much. Even if the bad episodes are so bad, the good episodes are so good. And the next episodes that we're going to talk about and rank together are even better than Gang of Secrets. Not because Gang of Secrets has any flaws that these other ones don't. It's because there are just so much more good things in these next episodes. So, let's get to it, shall we? Next. First thing you need to know about Risk, Lila's back after a season of being incognito. I feel like there are two ways you could react to this. One,
I hate you! I'm so happy to see you!
or number two, scientifically known as my response to Lila's return.
Where have you been, you recalcitrant banana?
Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Lila's absence in Season 4 and generally wasted character can be discussed in its own video essay, believe me. This is part 1 of the season finale, which means expect some shenanigans. And boy, do we get shenanigans this episode. Shadowmoth creates an akumatized villain designed to make people take loads of risks. This causes people to behave uncharacteristically carelessly, and it gives Adrian the courage to finally tell somebody how he really feels about being controlled by his father all the time. But that's not all. Felix is back, and you know when Felix is here, that means a good episode is coming. Since he has a very strong inclination that his uncle is Shadowmoth, he decides to spy on him and steal the butterfly and peacock Miraculouses from him. Not knowing that Gabriel actually anticipated this, and so planted fakes for him to steal. But not before Felix falls down the Tower of Terror in order to find out Gabriel's secret lair that he's been hiding under the mansion the whole time. And he is absolutely terrified of finding his aunt's dead corpse in the fridge. Honestly, Felix just makes every single episode that he's in infinitely better. You know, in that respect, he's actually kind of Chloe's antithesis, who makes every episode that she's in worse. Well, at least we can have one of our villains be well written and actually competent. Risk perfectly sets up all the plot points it needs to for Strike Back to pay them off. And while all of them do get paid off, Strike Back is also really good, which we'll get to later. But we do have another episode to talk about before we get to part 2 of the finale, and believe me when I tell you that this episode is great. Wishmaker is so unbelievably good that it's actually criminal. Every single character feels so expertly characterized. Marinette suddenly having a bit of a crisis, not really knowing what she wants to do with her life, and Luca being the clear-headed one, steering her towards the direction that he thinks that she wants. Adrian finally realizing that he has absolutely no idea what he wants his future to be because that's always been decided for him. And finally giving Alec, a character from Season 1, an akumatized form. He has an epiphany halfway through the episode that his making fun of others is just an outlet for his own insecurities, and he regrets not doing more with his life, and so he becomes Wishmaker, a supervillain who turns people into what they dreamed of being when they were children. And so Ladybug and Cat Noir can't risk getting hit by his beams because that would reveal who they are, because they didn't really want to be Ladybug and Cat Noir when they were children. And this makes Cat Noir realize he had no childhood dreams, and so he lets Wishmaker use his power on him just to find out what he wanted. He's so desperate to see if he had any control of his life at any point in his life, and he finds that he didn't have any childhood dreams of his own, just what his parents wanted him to be. And this added so much fuel to the fire that was the Adrian is a sentient monster theory that I actually do believe, and was confirmed in representation in Season 5, so there we go. But I've been saving the absolute best part of this episode for last. This is the scene that everyone remembers Wishmaker for. I cannot do the scene justice, so I'm just going to let it speak for itself.
Live your childhood dream!
Awesome! I always wanted to be the knitting fairy in real life!
Marinette?
Live your childhood dream!
When I was a kid, I always wanted to be what my parents wanted me to be.
Just look at him process what he just found out. That's right, Luca finds out who Ladybug and Cat Noir are. Just when I thought Gang of Secrets had the best identity reveal, but Wishmaker blesses us and gives us 2. Now Luca has the responsibility of knowing both of their identities and trying to keep it from Shadowmoth. And it's such an interesting direction for his character to go. Now he really does know more than he lets on and has to keep these things secret to protect the people he loves. loves. This reveal absolutely took everybody's breath away when Wishmaker first aired, and for that it deserves this spot. If nothing else, for that alone. I think it's about time we move to the next episode now. The top 3. These are the big ones. The 3 best episodes of Season 4 in my opinion. So let's stop dilly-dallying, let's get to those. Sentibubble is an episode that really showcases how good Alia has become in Season 4. Shadowmoth has Alia's family hostage in order to get her to betray Ladybug, and if Alia doesn't comply, the Sentibubble is going to kill her family. Wow, Gabriel's not really messing around anymore, is he? Alia is very resourceful and quick on her feet this episode in order to prevent Ladybug from being betrayed. And her plan is honestly really intelligent. She creates an illusion as Rena Rouge to be Ladybug and Alia talking about how Alia cannot have the Fox Miraculous anymore because it's way too dangerous. Successfully tricking Shadowmoth into thinking Rena Rouge will no longer get in his way. Then she creates an illusion of Ladybug to lure Shadowmoth away so she can execute the next phase of her plan. She can create an illusion of Marinette in the bubble so that Marinette can actually transform into Ladybug, unify it with the Horse Miraculous, and become Pegabug. Then Pegabug teleports to Shadowmoth's location in order to steal away the object that controls the Senti monster. First, Shadowmoth destroys Sentibubble because he has no use for him anymore, and that means Alia's family are falling from the sky. But then they get caught in time thanks to a yo-yo net. Shadowmoth's plan was actually pretty lethal this time around, as Alia's family could have been killed if she went wrong. So every phase of Alia's plan had to be executed carefully unless real lives were put in danger. Alia's plan was honestly really good, and she was very quick-witted, which really made the episode to me. And this all hinges on the decision by the writers to have Marinette tell her secret identity to Alia in Gang of Secrets, because it opened up a wellspring of new storylines. There's finally more to Alia's character now, and I couldn't be more grateful. This is the kind of character Alia needed seasons ago, but I'll take what I can get. And this is one of those few episodes where Shadowmoth is actually not just lounging around in his lair waiting for somebody else to get angry. He's taking initiative and executing plans all on his own, and that's very unique and refreshing. This episode really showed that Marinette can actually trust Alia to keep secrets and also take initiative in case things go wrong. And I don't know what this episode could have been if not for Alia, because without her, this episode just doesn't work and doesn't exist. So thank you, Gang of Secrets, for not just being a really good episode on your own, but for also paving the way for other good episodes to follow you. Okay, I kept you all waiting for too long. We're talking about Strike Back now. Strike Back is so good. It's suspenseful, it's exciting, and it's emotional. It makes me feel every feeling, everywhere, all at once. Shadowmoth's plan to make people take risks is really paying off, as the heroes are all behaving very recklessly in the fight, and it's hindering their skills. So Marinette tries to come up with a plan to defeat the risky behavior that they're taking when they realize that risk is the one making them take so many, well, risks. She goes to see who she thinks is Adrian on the train, but it's actually Felix, and oh boy, here we go. She gives him the power of the Dog Miraculous, which allows him to fetch and retrieve whatever his ball has touched. Felix puts his hand on the yo-yo, pretending to not know what the Dog Miraculous is for, and that is just some crazy foreshadowing. And then they return to Paris, and it looks like the ending of the Hunchback of Notre Dame. Everything is just covered in flames. Like, what happened while they were gone? Jeez. With Felix's help, they managed to defeat Risk and turn him back into just a regular boy, which we should be happy about, but since Shadowmoth said that he knows that Ladybug made a mistake, and we know that Felix was given the Dog Miraculous by accident, we know something bad is going to happen. And Felix acting so sinisterly just really builds you with such an anticipatory sense of dread. You're screaming at the TV for Ladybug to realize that it's Felix and to take the Dog Miraculous back from him, please, before something bad happens. But then, it's too late. Felix used Fetch on the yo-yo, and so... The newly introduced Hawkmoth, I suppose, monologues to Paris about how Ladybug made a mistake and gave him all the Miraculouses because of her incompetence, and how he's never going to stop torturing everybody until someone gives the Miraculouses to him. Ladybug tells Cat Noir that she's really sorry about the way she treated him all season, and that she should have known better because she's the Guardian. But Cat Noir doesn't care. He reaches out for her hand in an act of friendship and forgiveness. He tells her that they're going to work this out together and fix everything, and he'll always be there for her no matter what. Cat Noir has faith in her, and the people have faith in her, and that's all she needs to keep going, and defeat Monarch one day. It's such a bittersweet ending for Season 4, and I couldn't think of any better way to end it. Everything's executed flawlessly, and really has me at the edge of my seat right until the end credits. It was, is, and will always be one of the best moments in the whole show by far. And it's only number 2! I bet you can guess by process of elimination what got that coveted number 1 spot. So let's talk about... Optigami is like watching your favorite characters meet their demise. Style Queen just completely eviscerates everyone in her path, and it's chilling to see who might be next. This is the one episode where I believe that Shadowmoth's plan is actually perfect. By taking out all of the heroes except one chosen one, Optigami can go into their Miraculous and they can find out where Ladybug lives. Ladybug and Rena Rouge both come up with a plan to defeat Style Queen without the knowledge of all the senti monsters around them and Optigami. Optigami is just a tiny little butterfly-like senti monster that just flutters around, hides in objects, and watches everybody's moves. The best part about this episode is the dramatic irony. The plan succeeds for most of the episode, which means you're watching the villains get one over on the heroes and the heroes being oblivious to what's really happening. I mean, Ladybug's lucky charm isn't even used on Style Queen because that's not what was really going on at all. Unlike literally every other episode this season, the heroes were had. I was on the edge of my seat for the whole episode waiting for the heroes to figure it out, but it only happened at the end. The lucky charm shows that Nino has somehow forgotten the secret handshake he and Alia has, and so that clues her in that he's not real and is a senti monster clone. And what makes this so chilling is that if it weren't for the lucky charm, Shadowmoth would have won. He would have found out where Marinette lives, and he probably would have ambushed her. The difference between this episode and Strike Back is that it's honestly a lot more scary in my opinion if you almost lose everything than actually losing everything. If you do lose everything, eventually there'll be some kind of closure, as in, well, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me, it can't get any worse than this. But to come so close to losing everything you hold so valuable, you are reminded just how fickle and fleeting it all is. How easy it is to go and lose everything you love. And you live your life in paranoia, wondering when the next close call will be and how bad it will be. Shadowmoth's plan has successfully instilled that very raw primal fear in our characters' hearts, and that makes it the most real and the best episode of Season 4, in my opinion. But what do I know, right? I'm just some guy on YouTube. Let me know where you would rank these episodes in the comment section below. I'd love to hear all of your opinions. This has been a critical retrospective, and I'll see you in the next video essay.